Hey everyone, thanks for watching Bridgeport's Brightest Lights, and in this video I'm going to go over the complete basics on how to use RGB pixels for someone who wants to create their first light show. I'm going to go over how to power them and how to get data to them, and some other stuff about them. And then in other videos I will talk more in depth about each topic because I can't fit all of it into one video because there's so much to learn. So, let's get started. So if you have never seen an RGB pixel up close, there are three main different kinds. You have a bullet pixel, which looks like this, and it's shaped like a bullet, and it has a little computer chip inside of it, and then it has two sets of three wires going into it. You have data, voltage, and ground, and then data, voltage, and ground on the other side, and has a computer chip inside of it to process the data. And then there's also a square pixel. It's shaped more like a square, and it also has a computer chip on the bottom. And there's the light bulb right there. Same thing with data, power, and ground. Data, power, and ground. And then you also have RGB pixel tape, which looks like this. So it is pixels on a strip of something. I'm not quite sure what it is. And then you have the lights on there, and then you can have the data go through it. But these ones are not waterproof. The other ones that I showed you are waterproof. You can get these ones though to be waterproof, but it costs a little extra money. Now these lights up here, they're not technically pixels, but this is what it looks like. These are dumb pixels, and I'll go over later on in the video what that means. So you now know what an RGB pixel looks like. Now, RGB pixels are capable of doing so many different patterns on them. Unlike regular Christmas lights where you just plug them in and they turn on all one color, RGB pixels can turn any color you want. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, any color you can think of. White, brown, anything basically. Now, the whole strand though doesn't light up that same color. You can make each individual light up any color you want, which is very cool. Now what are dumb pixels, or the pixels that I just showed you that are up there? Those are somewhat like pixels, regular pixels. They don't use data though. You can still select the color for the whole strand and pick whatever color you want, red, green, orange, all those colors. But you can't change each individual pixel. You can only set the whole strand to the same color, unlike pixels where each individual light can be any color it wants. So, dumb pixels you can still use in your light show, but you do need other controllers because the controller that I use does not allow dumb pixels, and most don't unless you buy a special board to go with it. So I have a small little strand of square pixels right here now. So if you look, each pixel has an arrow on it so you can tell which way the data goes because it can't go both ways. So data comes in this way. So let's say I have this plugged in to the controller, which I'll explain in a minute. I could have this light up red, this one light up orange, this one green, and then the rest of the strand purple all at once through the data. I could have the lights flashing between red and green. I could have one pixel be red and then have it go down the line. So like this one would be red, then it turn off, then this one would be red and then it turn off. And I can do it so it takes 1 second to go between each pixel, or 0.1 seconds to do it between each pixel. These lights can change up to 40 times a second, which is very fast. Most people use 20 times a second, but I like to use them faster because I think the effects look better on them. And so that means each light can change every 25 milliseconds, which is extremely fast. So I could have all three of these pixels on green and then have them go down the line so it looks like a bar effect going down. Or I could punch them into something like this snowflake that I have here, and then I could have them all going in a circle. So like this line would light up here, and then this one, and then it spin around like a circle. And I can do it up to 25 times or up to 40 times a second for 25 milliseconds. So it would look really cool. So pixels are capable of doing many different patterns. Now, since they are capable of doing that, they are a little bit harder to set up and use with all of the stuff that they need. First off, they are a little more expensive than regular Christmas lights. You can buy like 50 lights at a store for $3, even cheaper if it's after Christmas. But these ones, depending on what store you're buying them from, they usually cost around $25 for 100 or $17 for 50. So they do cost a little bit more money. But to set them all up, you need a whole system of electronics to use them. So don't let that scare you. The information I'm about to tell you is a lot of stuff, but it's actually not that hard to set up once you know how to do it. I thought it was very hard to set up last year because last year was my first year, but then I was like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. So pixels need two things to light up. First thing is they need power. Everything needs power, all lights need power, so that's simple. But they don't take 120 volts AC, which you would find in an outlet that I have right here, or any outlet in the US. That's way too much power for them. They use very low power. They either use 12 volts DC or 5 volts DC. Now, all the pixels I have are 12 volts DC. I prefer to use 12 volts because they don't require as much stuff that needs to be done to them, and I'll explain this in a different video. Because 5 volt pixels, once you get a long strand, they will start running out of power. 12 volts, they don't do that until you have a lot more pixels than that. So if this is your first year, I would recommend going with 12 volts. 12 volts are a little bit more expensive, but it's not that big of a deal. So you have power. That's super easy to get. You buy something called a power supply, and what this does is it basically, you screw in the neutral, the hot, and the ground wire into 3 terminals of it, and then it has 6 other terminals, so it converts that power from 120 volts to 12 volts. If you're using 12 volt pixels, you can buy a 5 volt power supply though if you need that, and then it has 3 plus 3 12 volt terminals, then 3 ground terminals. So that's how you get power, not that hard. The data is a little bit more hard, and you need to do about 3 things to get the data to the pixels. First, you need to make the sequences, as they're called, in special software to tell the lights what to do, when to light up, and how to do the patterns. So, like, I use a software called Xlights. It's free, and you can find it at www.xlights.org. And they are free, and they are always updating the softwares, and there's a lot of people working on it, so there's rarely a bug in it. So you make the sequences on your computer with the software. Then after you have that sequence, when you're done making that sequence, it saves it into a FSEQ file. That FSEQ file is stored on your computer until you want to put it on a different computer or the same computer to run the lights. So, to run the lights, you need to get the data from the computer that you make onto a device that will hold the data, and then when it's ready, send that data out to the controller. The controller will then take that data and then send it to the pixels. So that sounds like a lot of stuff, but it's not that complicated, trust me. So, you have the FSEQ file. There are 2 ways of getting the data to the controller. You can use a computer, which has that you would need different software that could send the data out through the Ethernet port, or you can use what's called a Raspberry Pi. No, not the kind of Raspberry Pi that you eat, a different kind of Raspberry Pi. This is a Raspberry Pi. It is a single board computer, and it can act like a computer if you buy the proper stuff for it. You can connect up, if you have the latest version, you can connect 2 monitors to it or 1. It has 4 USB ports, an Ethernet port. an audio jack. It has an SD card slot where you put the software on it, and then you plug in power here, and you can do some other stuff with it. And it does have pins on it too, so these are the GPIO pins, so if you've ever seen an Arduino before, you can use these pins like to control a relay like an Arduino could or something. So if you use this is what most people use, so you don't have to keep your computer out by a controller 24/7. You then take the FSEQ file, which is on the computer, and you upload it to this. And I am going to make other videos going in more detail on how to upload it to this, but you basically do it over your Wi-Fi, because this has a Wi-Fi chip on it, and then this has the data on it. So once the data is on it, you then tell the Raspberry Pi at this time send the data out. It will send the data out through the Ethernet port into the controller. And now once you have this, it works all by itself. As long as it has power, it will do whatever it needs to do when you tell it to. And then the controller receives the data. Once the controller receives the data, it changes it into pixel data and then sends it out to the pixels. So you have a computer, you make the file, upload the file either to this computer or keep it on that same computer, and then use that computer to run the lights. So file, you make the file, goes onto the computer then sends the data out to the controller, and then the controller then sends out the data to the lights. So there's a lot of stuff that you need to have, but it's not that complicated. Now you may be wondering, can I use music with my pixels? Because I've seen people do that before. Yes, these lights can be synchronized to music. The software X Lights will allow you to add audio to your sequences, and then while you're programming them, it will have the audio track above, so you can tell the lights flash red at this part of the song, and then fade out white at this part of the song. And you can do all of that stuff. And then once you have an audio file with your FSEQ file, if you're using this computer, you would upload the FSEQ file and the audio file. Then once those are both on here and you tell it to start, you would send out the audio through this audio jack right here. So when you tell the computer to do what you want it to do, it would send out the audio here. You can also buy something to make the audio sound better, because the audio straight out of the Pi is not the greatest. You can buy what's called a sound blaster, and it plugs into the USB ports and then has a audio jack on it, and it makes the audio sound so much better. So that's how you get the data onto here, and then the data sends out to the controller. The controller, you don't need to really tell it anything except which pixels are plugged in where, so it knows where to send out the data. You don't need to put any files on it or anything. This just sends the file straight out to it. So now that you have all that, you know the basics of how to run RGB pixels. There are some other stuff, and you need to set this up and the controller up and some other stuff, and I am going to go into more detail on other videos about how to do that. So other than that, thank you for watching. Subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and also hit the notifications bell so you'll get notified when I upload new videos, and I'll see you next time.